I am the Director of Economic Development Services here at the Quad Cities Chamber, and I'm currently also serving as the Finance Assistance Team on the COVID response team here at the Quad Cities Chamber as well. Thank you and welcome to our webinar, Frequently Asked Questions on the Illinois Rapid Response Layoff Aversion Grant. The Quad Cities Chamber strives to be your one-stop business resource to assist with all of your pandemic questions, connecting you to reliable and accurate information. There's a lot of new information out there to process and respond to during these rapidly evolving and uncertain times. The Quad Cities Chamber is here for you, advocating for your businesses at the state and federal levels and providing resources to help protect your health of your workforce and your operations. We're committed to bringing you the latest information as quickly as possible. The Quad Cities Chamber recently launched a Reopening Your Business in the Age of COVID-19 Toolkit, a 50-page downloadable PDF on our website that provides best practices and suggested considerations to help businesses prepare to reopen safely when Illinois and Iowa health officials give them the green light. The COVID-19 resource page on our website, quadcitieschamber.com, is updated several times a day. If you haven't signed up for our e-news, you can do that on our website as well. We will get through this together. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Mark Lohman of the American Jobs Center. Mark currently serves as the Executive Director of the American Jobs Center for the local Workforce Investment Area 13, which includes Henry, Mercer, and Rock Island counties. He's held this position since 2012. Prior to being a workforce professional, he has 35 years experience in the private sector. He serves on several business and nonprofit boards here in the Quad Cities and nationally. We'd like to thank Mark for his presentation today. If you have questions as a participant, we will be taking those at the end if time allows. Please enter those in the Q&A box on your screen, and we'll get to those as time allows. So this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the Quad Cities Chamber website. So now I'd like to turn over to Mark.
Good morning. Thank you, Janelle. I'm grateful to the Quad Cities Chamber and Paul Rumler and the entire professional staff. I too have been a participant and a recipient of all the good information that comes from the Chamber. Our organization is a member of the Quad Cities Chamber, and we are one of 22 local workforce areas in the state of Illinois. Our programs are federally funded and have been reauthorized by Congress and appropriated and signed into law by the President. In the state of Illinois, our grants are administered by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We're going to go through some information today, and then we're going to follow up through the Chamber or directly from our local Workforce Development Board and the American Jobs Center. We will provide you with the resources you need to apply for this grant. The funding is something that is evolving, and the Illinois Department of Commerce, as shown on the next slide, is applying for various federal grants. And this PowerPoint presentation will be provided to you, but there will be additional grant funding that we anticipate that will be available. This grant today is emergency assistance. It is called Layoff Aversion Funds, and it is already available. The state of Illinois has this funding, and it is available to small businesses and small not-for-profit organizations. But there will be additional funding and various types of funding available. And that is something that you can access by making an inquiry to the Chamber or to the American Jobs Center or by looking on illinoisworknet.com. If you would advance the slide, please. This is part of funding that the state of Illinois already has, and it is a result of the executive orders that the governor has issued, and it is considered statewide funding and it is specifically as a result of the executive order, the stay-at-home order of the governor of Illinois. This funding is not available for businesses that are in the state of Iowa. If there is a question about Iowa, we can refer you to our counterparts in the state of Iowa. The federal workforce system is nationwide. The intent of this funding is to help businesses and not-for-profits continue to serve the public and to avoid laying off their employees. Allowable activities that the funds can be used for, as shown on the next slide, include quite a broad categories of funding or expenses that a business or a not-for-profit can incur. They are intended to all be related to the pandemic. So cleaning and sanitation services, either to continue making a safe environment for employees or preparing for reopening to the public. Computer software and hardware, and yes, specifically computers may be purchased for work that needs to be done. Sometimes the primary need is working remotely and upgrading the applications and the hardware needed to work from home or work remotely. It can be used for call center operations, either existing call centers or call centers that need to be put into place due to the pandemic. It also can provide for other expenses of working remotely, working from home, upgrading internet service, providing for cell phone, mobile phone service, etc. It definitely includes training, and training of employees and your staff may be necessary in this time. Having people become cross-trained in job functions that they would not have normally done, or transitional training, training to become effective at safety and health and preparing safe workplaces and safe public places. Production of essential goods and services covers a wide variety of things. Essential goods, we've probably heard through the news that businesses are converting to make ventilators, face coverings, shields, hand sanitizer. So that type of expense is definitely essential. But there's a lot of services that are considered essential in this time. And so when you look at the possibility of applying and categorizing what you would pay for, when in doubt, apply for it and consider it, because the intent is to provide for what is necessary. So the definition of essential, if you pay attention to the news and what's going on, especially in geographic areas, there's different definitions of what essential is. So just consider it to be something that may be or that you already know is essential in your particular business. And then if you're working in your sector, it could be your manufacturing sector, it could be your IT sector, your transportation sector, your not-for-profit sector. If you're doing things jointly, if you need to do things regionally or geographically, something that's outside the box that's in response to COVID-19, definitely submit and consider that as allowable activities and allowable costs. The next page, we'll talk briefly about prohibited costs. This grant is not intended to pay your employee wages, benefits, or hazard pay. It does not pay for supportive services such as childcare, transportation, lodging, expenses, or meals. Although it is allowable to purchase equipment, and many grant applications are including equipment purchases, a single item or a single unit, or to use the example I mentioned a little bit ago, a computer, the single unit value cannot be $5,000 or more. But collectively or in aggregate, your equipment purchases can add up to much more than that. The funding cannot be used for political or religious activities, branding, or marketing. It cannot be used for fundraising, paying fines or penalties, or making donations. It cannot be used for an individual membership, and it cannot be used for unnecessary costs that are not directly related to the purpose of the project. And once again, the primary purpose of the project, obviously, is the coronavirus disease pandemic, and then another purpose is staying in business and keeping your workers employed. Next slide, please. The funding range is $5,000 to $50,000. It can be per business. It can be per physical location. For those of you that may have more than one location within our local area of Rock Island, Henry, and Mercer counties, an application could be made for each location. There is, in the documentation, it does say that amounts over $50,000 may be considered due to extenuating circumstances. I think that is something that if you need it, apply for it, but any consideration could be kept within that range of $5,000 to $50,000. The abbreviation LWIA is Local Workforce Investment Area. And once again, our local area includes our 3-county region on the Illinois side of the river: Henry, Mercer, and Rock Island. The application itself is where you document risk factors. There are check boxes to make that a very simple process. The application itself is only 3 pages. It is a fillable form. You can type on it. If necessary, you may fill it out with handwriting. It is something that, for the sake of urgency, it does need to be scanned. After completion, it needs to be scanned and emailed rather than put into the paper mail of the United States Postal Service. Once again, if you need to do something as a region, or if you need to be referred outside of our 3-county area, we can do that. Every county in the state of Illinois is part of a local workforce investment area. And if you need to be referred to the state of Iowa, we will do that as well. The funding is something that's on a reimbursement basis. You submit a simplified budget with the grant application, and then in order to receive the actual cash, you would submit receipts or documentation that the activities have been completed. Eligible employers on the next page. Good standing in the state of Illinois. Next slide, please. Good standing in the state of Illinois is simple. If you are incorporated as a corporation, or if you have formed a limited liability company, an LLC, your good standing or your active standing can be verified on the Illinois Secretary of State website, so you do not need to submit that type of documentation. And that also includes not-for-profit corporations. If you are a sole proprietor, or if you are organized as a partnership, then you may need to provide additional documentation. A professional license from the Illinois Department of Professional Regulation or the Illinois Department of Insurance, tax information showing that you're self-employed. Those types of things can be requested even after the submission of a grant application. Next slide, please. The application requirements are all explained in the application. These slides can be provided to you along with other documentation, but these are part of the simplified application process. So completing the blanks and the check boxes on the application makes it very likely that you will satisfy these application requirements. Next slide, please. The application submission is something that is done by email, and once again, that's important. This is a limited amount of funding. There is urgency. These applications need to be signed here in the local area before they are forwarded to the Illinois Department of Commerce. But that will be done frequently throughout these upcoming days, including Saturday and Sunday. This grant funding will run out soon. It is something that will just frankly go quickly because it is being promoted throughout the state of Illinois. And so if you are interested, I encourage you to start working on your application today. The next slide shows priorities for these applications based on need, based on size of business or not-for-profit. And there is a link where you can check that. It is based on the U.S. Small Business Administration, or SBA, and small can be defined by number of employees or annual receipts, annual revenues. So that can vary from organization to organization. Our contact information is provided here on the next screen, and we are available to take telephone calls as well as emails, and those telephone numbers also have voicemail, so that we will get back to you, and that will include this weekend. Now we have some time for questions, and those questions can be put into writing in the Q&A that's available to each one of you participating, and we will answer as time permits today, and then we will follow up with questions after this presentation. Janelle?
Okay. Thanks, Mark, so much for that info. It's a great overview of the program. And so just a reminder to attendees, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A box on the bottom bar of your webinar screen. And so we have a couple of them so far, so we'll run through those. Our first question is, how quickly will the applications be awarded and reviewed, or reviewed and then awarded?
The application, once completed, will be submitted locally. Those are being reviewed in a real-time basis. And if we notice anything that is omitted or incorrect, we will get back to you. And the submission process is also very immediate. We will submit applications. We will submit all applications. We do not make any decisions at the local level. We will not stand in the way of any application. Our function is to get them submitted immediately to the Illinois Department of Commerce in Springfield. And the review process has already started, and we are receiving daily reports so that we know which applications are recommended for review, and then we also know which applications need additional information or perhaps lack documentation. But an application should be submitted immediately as soon as you complete it. Do not hesitate to submit, and if there's documentation that you need to take time to get, Submit the application now. Don't wait. The documentation could be submitted with a follow-up email.
Good to know. Thank you. Okay, next question is from Anonymous. Can we be reimbursed for expenses that we have already dispersed money for?
That is possible, and it is something that you would need to document and provide receipts. That is not guaranteed, but you should consider that and include that as part of your simplified budget on your application. And it would, based on the reimbursement provision is that you would subsequently have to provide receipts and documentation.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Anonymous: are municipalities and city departments eligible for funding?
That is not part of this grant. It is not intended to fund governmental entities. I know the National Association of Counties and many other organizations are working with Congress because local governments and local counties need assistance during this time. But this grant does not apply to municipalities and local governments.
Okay, thank you. Question from Tim: how are the funds distributed?
The funds would be distributed on a reimbursement basis. If your application is reviewed favorably, the Illinois Department of Commerce makes a decision, and each business or not-for-profit would be notified, and then the funding reimbursement is based on subsequently providing receipts. The receipts, of course, are not provided at the time of application, but that would be done subsequently.
Okay, thank you. We have maybe a little complicated question, so we may have to take this one offline, but let's see if we can answer it. So from Anonymous: we employ 50 to 80 part-time and full-time employees. We have laid off 50 plus at this time. Can we submit an application for things like chairs and phones that are needed for people who work at home? And if so, we need to show that we purchased them already?
So Janelle is right. This may be something that can be discussed offline, but you should definitely submit an application. And I think once you look at the application and the supporting documentation, you'll see that that is something that is considered in this grant opportunity. And the only other thing I would say is if you have a doubt, go ahead and apply. Don't disqualify yourself, because once again, the Illinois Department of Commerce is trying to make this as simple a process as possible, and they're proactively trying to award grants. They're not trying to keep the money back. They're gonna get rid of all of it in upcoming days.
Okay, thank you. Question from Chris Moyer: when estimating cost factors for professional cleaning services, does the cost need to be daily, monthly, or yearly projections?
It's not necessarily based on a calendar period. It's based on this project. So if you, in your simplified budget, if you are cleaning your facilities for your employees, or if you're cleaning your facilities in anticipation of reopening to the public, it would be a project cost, and the budget is not broken into daily or monthly or yearly categories. It's not an annual budget. It is a project budget.
Okay, thank you. We have about 5 minutes left, so we have a few questions to keep rolling through. From Julie: if an application is not awarded, can an entirely new application be made for a different expense?
Yes. An application, there can be more than one application. What we have found with some of the applications already received is that some are ready for review, some require additional application information or documentation. So we have already had applications that have been resubmitted a second time. And so an application, for example, through some websites, people have found the application, but they did not find the instructions.
Okay.
And so they would put wages on the application, which is not allowable. So then if that makes it past us at the local area, then the Illinois Department of Commerce would say, no, this needs to be updated or revised. So yes, and if you've already worked on an application and after today's webinar, you get the instructions for the first time, you can start amending your own application, or you can reach out to Sarah or me with questions or for assistance.
Okay. Question from Phil. He said he sent the application to your personal email. Should he resend to the 2 emails listed in the program?
That application was received, signed, and forwarded to the Illinois Department of Commerce, and it was accepted for review.
Awesome. Great to hear. Thanks. Okay. Anonymous. Once money is approved, how quickly do the funds need to be used? Is there a time limit to use them?
That is always a question that relates to either the federal government or the state government. We do not have a guarantee of when the money will actually be paid out. The state of Illinois is mostly working remotely, and when cash is dispersed from the state of Illinois, it has to go through the treasurer and the comptroller, and it can take a few days. I'm not capable of shortening up the bureaucratic process, but once you're approved, it will be issued.
Okay. And then this will be our last question today. It says, we are a hotel looking to reopen that would require us to clean and sanitize all rooms and spaces. Can I apply for extra time of my housekeepers and supplies that will be required to sanitize the hotel?
The budget would show the cost of sanitizing. The budget may not include wages for the business's own employees, but the cleaning and sanitation, the supplies that are used by your own employees, or you may need to contract with a professional service or another business that does that type of work, then that contract amount could be part of your budget.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Mark. Just a few final things. There was a question about where do we find the application. There is a link to the application on the Chamber's website on the May 1st blog. We're also going to be sending out follow-up information, and it will be included in that as well. So thanks again, Mark, for joining us today and for presentation and question and answer. This webinar was recorded and will be available on our website, quadcitieschamber.com. Be sure to keep up to date with us on social media, and don't forget to download the Reopening Your Business in the Age of COVID-19 Toolkit, which can be found on our website. Again, thanks for joining us today and providing us with such valuable information on the Illinois Rapid Response Layoff Aversion Grants. I think the bottom line in all this is look at the application, turn in the application, and that the deadline is probably going to be early next week. The program will run out of money. I'll say that. I don't know if Mark can say that, but early next week. So work on it today, this weekend. And again, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you all.